Welcome back, everybody. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Happy Packers-Bears game day. We only get 17 of these every single year, regular season. We only get 2 Packer-Bear games, only one of them at home, and it's on Sunday Night Football, Week 2. Packers in need of a win, coming off a loss against the Vikings. Bears surprisingly pick up a win against the San Francisco 49ers in a slop fest in Chicago last week. So I think if you would have told me or anyone, any Packer fan, I guess I should say, that going into this game, one of the teams would be 1-0 and the other would be 0-1, I think you as a Packer fan probably would have felt really good about knowing that knowledge, knowing that the odds that the Packers lost to the Vikings and that the Bears lost or beat the 49ers were probably pretty slim, but that's where we sit today. And now the Packers are going to try to go to 1-1 and get the Bears to 1-1, try to break even in the NFC North with their long-time division rival. So I'm actually recording this today at 12:24 a.m. on game day, and I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, we would get a couple injury updates from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport with the Packers' 4 questionable players. And thankfully, my patience was paid off, and we did get an update from Adam Schefter really early on Sunday morning, and that is that Allen Lazard will play in this game. He is expected to play. So Green Bay has 4 players that were listed as questionable coming into this game: David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, and John Runyon Jr. It does sound now like Allen Lazard will play in this game, which certainly changes the dynamic amongst the weapons on this Packers offense. Struggled a little bit a week ago, although I thought that this past week was so much more due to the offensive line and just complete lack of rhythm than it was in the weapons. Now, to be fair, Christian Watson has the big drop, and it's not like the weapons were just getting open over and over again. So having Allen Lazard back in this game, a reliable target that Rodgers trusts, I think that should go, I don't know if a long way, but it'll certainly help to hopefully reestablish some of that rhythm that Green Bay just did not have at all against Minnesota. So great news that Allen Lazard will be playing in this game, Still no update on the injuries, at least as of recording this, on David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, or John Runyon Jr. So as of right now, all 3 are questionable. With Bakhtiari not practicing in full on Friday, I would bet that he does not play in this game. And that's what was reported by Ryan Wood just a week ago as well when he didn't play week 1. It's that he was not expected to play week 2 either. So that would be my expectation. Elton Jenkins, John Runyon Jr., harder to predict. Elton Jenkins was a full participant in practice on Friday. I would more lean towards him playing, and JRJ is, to me, the real coin flip because it's concussion protocol. It's not a Packers call. It's literally, did he get through the protocols in time? If he did, he'll play. If he didn't, he won't. And we just don't, at least I don't, as of recording this, have an update as to whether or not he passed all the protocols or not. So I will say that John Runyon Jr. plays. That's just a pure guess. I will say that Jenkins plays. We know that Lazard is going to play. I'm going to say that Bakhtiari does not. And if they do, in fact, get JRJ, Elton Jenkins, and Allen Lazard back, that would be a huge win for this Packers offense. As, again, they struggled a week ago. Running goes out midway through the game. If they had him back, Elton Jenkins probably at right tackle, push Royce Newman back to right guard. Should it be Zach Tom? Probably, maybe, who knows, but probably would be Royce Newman in that scenario. You feel better about Yash at left tackle, that with the rest of that group in there, and Elton at right tackle. So that would be big. And then getting Allen Lazard, the Packers de facto number 1 wide receiver, back in there would be huge as well. Packers did make one other move on Saturday, and that was to call up Patrick Taylor from the practice squad. The first thought in my mind of they didn't pull up Winfrey, that probably is a good sign for Allen Lazard. Well, yep, it was, because again, as Adam Schefter reported, Lazard will be playing in this game. But interesting that they pull up a running back. Certainly didn't have to. They didn't in week 1, but I do think that this is a game where Green Bay is going to very much want to establish the running game, and they probably just want that depth, and they probably just want another player that, if they do have a lot of 2 running back personnel in their, sort of in their playbook or in their game plan for this week, that if one of those guys were to go down, they still have another player in Patrick Taylor who can pick up, some of the slack. And, Taylor's played in this offense before. And I know that there was some thought of immediately of well, why not Tyler Goodson? Tyler Goodson's the better running back. Tyler Goodson's not getting called up, or Patrick Taylor, for that matter, is not getting called up to run the ball, right? if Patrick Taylor gets in this game, it'll be as a specialist, and likely it would be more of like a pass protection situation. Maybe he gets a handoff or two, but like either way, you're not expecting any running back that you call up in this game to get any more than like 2 or 3 carries at the most, unless something catastrophic happens. And again, if they're in the game, you want it probably more for special teams and pass pro, and that's just Patrick Taylor at this point. So I get the call up. If this were a situation where, let's say Aaron Jones wasn't able to go and you were only still going to pull up one running back. In that situation, I think maybe you feel better about Tyler Goodson because you need more of a pure running back and you need somebody to replace Aaron Jones, which is a little bit more Tyler Goodson. In this case, you don't really need a replacement. You're just looking for a number 3 back who can maybe contribute a couple things here or there. And to me, Taylor can just do a few more of those things at this point in his career. So interesting that they pull up a running back. Not super surprised that it was Taylor and not Goodson. All right, as we break down this Packers and Bears game, the first thing I did, at least I guess not the first thing, but I did it on Friday night, was I went and watched the All-22 from Bears 49ers. Now, this is one of those games where you can't glean a ton from because it's A, week 1, and B, it was a sloppy field, and C, then even towards the end of the game, you had just like monsoon level rains. It was a not perfect conditions to say the least. So what you take away from that is tough to say, but I will say this. Watching those teams, I was so unimpressed with the Chicago Bears offense. I thought their defense played pretty well. And listen, they rallied, and give Justin Fields credit, because if that's Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, any of those previous quarterbacks, playing for the Bears there, I think even Jay Cutler, I think they lose that game easily. Sincerely. Fields had no time to throw. His weapons weren't getting open with any consistency. It was just Justin Fields' sheer will and, really improvisation that got them the Austin Pettis touchdown. They settled down a little bit after that. Fields, I think, gained a little bit of confidence after that Pettis play. And they were able to pick up a big win against the 49ers. And so I can't, hate on the Bears too much because they won the game and the Packers didn't. And more importantly, they beat the 49ers, something that the Packers seemingly can never do. And even more importantly than that, I thought the Bears, played with a level of heart and intensity that Green Bay just didn't show up with in week 1. The Bears did. They went out, they played, even though they don't have the guys, they don't have the players, they played a physical brand of football that ultimately got them a win, and they punched the 49ers in the face and they got out of Chicago with a win. So kudos to the Bears on that. They deserve that. But as I watched the team talent-wise, man, if you would have told me the play before the Pettis touchdown that the Bears won that game, I would have said there's just no way. I would have bet so much money that the Bears lost that game because they couldn't protect. They weren't getting open. Fields was in no rhythm, and I was very disappointed in a way because I like Justin Fields coming out. I really did. I thought that was a solid pick for Chicago. I had my concerns with his ability to get rid of the ball on time. It was something he really struggled with at Ohio State. So I had concerns over Fields, but I thought talent-wise, he was more than deserving to be a first-round pick. Certainly where the Bears got him, I didn't have any issue with that. As a Packer fan, I was hopeful that some of his, his flaws, specifically, his propensity to hold on to the football and not make quick decisions, would maybe not make him a star for Chicago. But he always had the arm talent. He always had the improvisation. He always had the maneuverability. There's some high-level things that Justin Fields can do on tape. And as I mentioned earlier, he sort of, even though he struggled and really did not play, in my opinion, what was a good game, he really, willed that team to victory at times. And certainly the Bears defense had a lot to do with that as well, and just kind of keeping them in that game. But I was disappointed in Fields in just his mechanics and the way that the ball came out of his hands. It fluttered a lot. No, clearly not perfect conditions, but I was expecting him to be a little bit further along at this point. I didn't see that. Now, the other thing here is, again, his talent around him is not doing him any favors. This is a quarterback who likes holding onto the ball a little bit with an offensive line that can't protect and weapons that don't get open with consistency. So something's going to have to give for the Bears, but I did not see a team that's going to win a lot of games. And again, I don't want to take anything away because they won that game, but they did not play a winning brand of football. Packers didn't either last week, but the Bears got away with a win, and the Packers did not. So that was my first takeaway, is that defensively, the Bears can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. I think Robert Quinn is certainly a player. Dominique Robinson on the other side, I think they've got the ability to rush the passer a bit. They've just kind of got some grinded out guys along the defensive front. Roquan Smith on the second level. I really like their young secondary who can run around, covered, play zone, play man. I think there's some versatility back there that they have with their defensive backfield with, Brisker and Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson, etc. So, I think those are some really, fun players on the back end of the defense. But overall, I didn't think that this was a talent-driven victory by the Bears. This was a really rough performance that the 49ers kind of gave to them at times, and the Bears took it, and credit to them for doing so. But I was not impressed with the overall tape. I wasn't impressed with the Packers tape either. But I think this is a game that when you just look at the talent on both teams, like Green Bay should run away with this game. I don't think they're going to. I think the Bears are going to fight them. I think they're going to be a pain in the butt. But I do think that the talent deficiency for the Bears here is legitimate, and I do think it's going to really catch up to them probably in this game and certainly through the course of the season as well. All right, let's get to my keys for the game. Number one, and I talked about this the other day, A, you cannot let Justin Fields out of the pocket, and B, you cannot let him gain confidence, because there was a night and day difference between Justin Fields prior to throwing that touchdown to Pettis and afterwards. Some of the stuff that he was still doing was still a struggle and didn't look pretty at times, but you could just tell he gained a level of confidence from making that play. And the 49ers on that play had him dead to rights. If you take a still shot, Justin Fields is facing the wrong way on the field, and there's two 49ers that are basically crashing in on him, and Fields does a spin-a-rooney, gets all the way to the left side, throws all the way to the right to Pettis. Fantastic play by Fields, but if the 49ers do their job there and just keep Justin Fields in the pocket, I honestly think they win that game. If it's not for that Pettis play, the 49ers win that game. And the 49ers just had to keep him in the pocket. And it is frustrating because everything in your DNA as a pass rusher is sack the quarterback, force fumble, sack fumble, hit the quarterback, all of those things. So the bigger thing here, though, is if you could just keep him in the pocket and keep him contained, their receivers aren't getting open, your guys are going to get home, you're going to engulf him and swarm him. But if he gets out and he runs around and buys time, A, he can hurt you with his arm, and B, he can hurt you with his legs. You are playing absolutely into Justin Fields' strengths if you let him run around and get out of the pocket. So Packers defense going to have to play disciplined football, not something they're always known for, let's be real, and just keep Justin Fields in the pocket. You can do that. I think they have they have a great chance to win this game regardless, but they should have a really good chance of completely limiting this Bears offense. And again, you don't want him to pick up confidence through the course of the game. I mentioned this on Happy Hour on Friday, but it's the Buccaneers quarterback, Freeman, from I don't know probably 15 years ago now. They let him get involved and active, Josh Freeman, in that game. And, because he got in a rhythm, the Buccaneers completely upset the Packers in that game. So, you don't want to let these young quarterbacks, and I know Fields, isn't a rookie anymore, but if you can allow or not allow Fields to get in any sort of rhythm, you're going to win this game. And to me, you're going to win this game with ease. Number two is basically the exact opposite from a week ago. And this is a low-hanging fruit one. You could say this every single week, but it's also legitimately true here. And that's you have to limit the mental mistakes. This, based on talent, should be a game that Green Bay wins easy. And the only way that you allow the Bears to keep hanging around is if you're the team that's making more mistakes. Green Bay made way more mistakes a week ago, whether it was the drop touchdown by Christian Watson, whether it was the failed fourth down, some poor reads, all the miscommunications in the defensive backfield. Those things haunt you, especially in division games, especially in games that you're supposed to win, like this Bears game. If you let the Bears hang around and, have a foothold in the game in the fourth quarter, they might steal it from you. And to me, the only way that they're in that position is if you're the team that's making the mistakes, and really it's the Packers beating the Packers. They got to avoid that. The Packers beat the Packers far too much in week one. Cannot happen again in week two. Number three, have to be aware of Robert Quinn and even Dominique Robinson, who had an impressive week one performance as a fifth-round rookie. I think those two guys combined, like they can make a pretty decent pass rush up front. And certainly Robert Quinn is somebody that you do not want to mess with, and he has the ability to wreck a game. That could be Yosh Nijman versus Robert Quinn quite a bit. That's an advantage for the Chicago Bears. And if you let him get going and start wrecking the game, it, again, just makes things that much harder. So got to be aware of Robert Quinn, got to make sure that you are chipping and helping where needed, especially on some of those longer developing plays, and just not letting him get, make those game-changing plays, the sack fumbles, those sort of things. That's what has the ability to beat you in this game. Number 4, we've been talking about it all week long, is I put here establish the run, but I'm going to change it actually. I'm going to say establish the running backs. I don't care if Jones and Dillon get handoffs. I don't care if they get, screen passes. I don't care if they get the ball down the field catching the ball. Like, they just need to be involved in this game in every way possible and let those guys do a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, a lot of that's up to the offensive line too. Those are the guys that have to really make the holes for those guys and make it so that you can stick with the run, because Jones and Dillon will get you yards that aren't there, but you need to make, some of those runs easier so that it's not constant heavy lifting and not, -1, -2, 3, 3 yards, 4 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards. Like, you got to get some of those explosives and really make the Bears come up, use an extra safety, open up play action, open up bootlegs, and those sort of things. But either way, they got to get Dillon and Jones rolling a lot more than they did a week ago. Number 5, more illusion of complexity, both on offense and on defense. That's something that Matt LaFleur stressed when he came in as head coach, illusion of complexity. Okay, I want to see this Matt LaFleur offense on the offensive side of the ball, and on the defense, a little less vanilla from Joe Barry. I want a little bit more pressure and controlled pressure, right? I don't want Justin Fields able to escape that pocket and beat the Packers with his legs, but I want a little bit more confusion for a second-year quarterback who's still trying to learn the nuances of the game. And for the Packers offense, I want to see them use a little bit more of that illusion of complexity and run that Matt LaFleur offense. I don't really need this hybrid, what Rodgers wants and what LaFleur wants. I want this LaFleur offense with the illusion of complexity and making things difficult for a young secondary for Chicago that, maybe won't, be able to dissect some of that stuff quite as easily as some of the veterans that the Vikings had a week ago. Number 6, really want to see some sound tackling on the running backs. I thought the 49ers failed on that a couple times a week ago when I watched the tape. David Montgomery and then Herbert Khalil Herbert are the two primary backs for the Bears. They're good running backs, and David Montgomery is still very, very good. I know that, sometimes people get down on him, but I thought he ran really hard against San Francisco, and I thought Khalil Herbert looked pretty darn good as well. There's not going to be a ton of openings from that Bears offensive line. They're just not good enough. So if you can wrap up, if you can do your job as a tackler, you're going to basically just by default stop that Bears running game. So make sure that you're not letting them get going, and make sure you're wrapping up and not letting them get those extra yards, falling forward, etc. Number 7, special teams. Special teams always seems to be in play when it's Packers-Bears. So it's just another way for the Bears to try to find ways with extra yardage or making a big play. If the Packers can limit the Bears special teams and at least, make that a close battle, again, it should make this game so much more in the favor of the Packers. Number 8, would love to see a Rashawn Gary takeover. Braxton Jones and Larry Borum, 5th rounder this year, 5th rounder last year, are the two offensive tackles. Rashawn Gary had a mostly nondescript game in week 1 against the Vikings. Better tackles than Darisaw and Brian O'Neill than what the Bears have. Rashawn Gary should be able to absolutely take over this game. That's what I want to see from the very first defensive snap, setting a strong edge, funneling everything back into Kenny Clark and those defensive linemen, but also getting to the quarterback, making those big plays, but making sure, again, he stays within contain and make sure that Justin Fields can't get out of the pocket. Number 9, get that Green Bay Lambeau Field crowd going. Not when the Packers are on offense, no doing the wave, no, make sure you're quiet when the Packers are on offense. But this is Lambeau Field, 80,000 plus or whatever it is, home field advantage, opening day. Should be a, Sunday Night Football should be a blast. Like, I want to see that crowd on their feet. I want to see this, the Packers reestablish a epic home field advantage, and I want it to start against the Chicago Bears. They've had playoff games at Lambeau, and it hasn't gone according to plan. And it does feel like Lambeau's maybe lost a little bit of that mystique. And I really want, the fans to be, when the teams get mentioned as like, where's the loudest stadium in the NFL? I really want Lambeau to get back in that of like, man, it is so hard to play at Lambeau Field. So it's up to the team to give the fans something to cheer for, but I want to see the fans really do their side of the heavy lifting as well. Number 10, I talked about this with Mike Wall, and Mike was really the one who brought it up. Just more physicality and more violence across the lines of scrimmage, right? I want to see this Packers offensive line play with a little bit more physicality, a little bit more intensity, and a little bit more violence. Same thing with, I thought Kenny Clark did that, but the Dean Lowrys, the Jerron Reeds, the Devontae Wyatts, the TJ Slaytons, the Rashawn Garys, the Preston Smiths, Quay Walker, Devondre Campbell, I want those guys up front to play with an intensity, and I want them to bring the pain to the Chicago Bears. Number 11, I know that the zone defense and the bend but don't break is not popular with fans, but this is a Bears offense that isn't going to be able to string together 15 play or 13 play or 12 play 80-yard drives. It's just not. They're not built for that. They don't have the talent. They don't have the pieces. They don't have the blocking. They don't have the quarterback. They don't have any of it. Make the Bears go the full length of the field. And that starts with special teams, pinning the Bears deep, not giving them good field position, no turnovers for the Packers offense. But while I want, Joe Barry and this Packers defense to be more aggressive, I do not want it to be at the cost of allowing explosive plays. Play safe, make them go the length of the field. I guarantee you, this is not a Bears team that's going to have 4, 80-yard touchdown drives. It's just not. The Packers are going to hold the Bears to limited points as long as they don't allow explosives. So make them go the length of the field. Play zone defense, play bend but don't break, keep everything in front of you. The Bears will give you the ball. They will screw things up. They will have holding penalties. This offense isn't going to put up major points, so make them do the heavy lifting through the course of the field. And number 12, all gas, no break. One of the other Packer cliches, but in a lot of other teams' cliches too. But I don't want to see any letting up if the Packers do get up in this game. I don't want the Bears to hang around. If you have an opportunity to, put your foot on the neck, then do so, because this is a team that is, if you're a Super Bowl aspiration team, the Green Bay Packers, and you're coming off a rather embarrassing loss at the hands of the Vikings, and now you play a far inferior opponent in week 2 at home, Lambeau Field home opener, you better show up. And I want the Packers to play 60 minutes of intense physical football and show who should be the real kings of the NFC North. So all gas, no break. Some fun matchups in this one. I'm hoping to see a little bit of Christian Watson versus Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson, a heck of a corner. Really great find for the Bears in the second round. I think it was last year, maybe the year before, one of the last 2 seasons. But either way, a heck of a corner. And the one thing that Johnson can struggle with at times a little bit is speed. So you've got this pure unadulterated speed from Christian Watson, the technique and just the pure coverage skills from Jalen Johnson. That could be a very fun matchup. Want to see some A.J. Dillon versus Roquan Smith collisions. That should be a lot of fun. I want to see Aaron Rodgers versus Brisker and Gordon, the 2 rookies, to see if he can maybe take advantage of them a little bit, maybe give them a look they're not expecting, maybe some of those no-look passes, whatever it takes to get maybe those rookies a little bit off-centered and maybe not doing some of the jobs that they're actually supposed to be doing. Justin Fields versus Quay Walker. I feel like we could see Quay Walker as a spy in this game, which some of those open field plays, Walker versus Fields, could be really fun to watch. And then you've got Pat O'Donnell and Adrian Amos, former Chicago Bears, playing against the Bears. Amos has had success and is looking for a bounce back week. The Bears have EQ and Lucas Patrick, and to a lesser extent, Mike Pennell, who had a cup of coffee with the Packers a handful of years ago now. So we've got some Packers and Bears turncoats in this game that switch teams, and we'll see how those guys do in this game. Predictions, I'm going to say a couple things. I'm going to say the Packers keep the Bears under 14 points. I'm going to say that the Bears stay annoying throughout the course of this game and just kind of pesky and bothersome and keep it close kind of until the end. But I'm going to say a 23-13 win for the Packers with a late Crosby field goal to kind of lock up that 2-score deficit and make it so that the Bears aren't able to come back. Hope everyone enjoys the game. Should be a fun Sunday night football game. Hopefully the Packers can come away with a big win. These are my least favorite games, by the way, because if the Packers win 42-0, it's like, it's the Bears. They're terrible anyway. If they win, but it's close, it's like, man, the Packers won, but like it was the Bears and the Bears kept it close. Is like, is that even a win that's like worth celebrating? Like, it's almost like a negative win, right? And if they lose, like, holy crap, like that is going to be panic fest for the entirety of the week, and then they go to Tampa Bay next week. So like the upside is minimal. Like there's almost nothing you could do. I mean, if they get a 42-7 win or something, I think it'll calm some of the nerves of Packer fans and make everything feel better. But it's almost like it's still, it's just the Bears. Everything else just feels like some sort of loss, which again puts the Bears in a more advantageous and fun position, and the Packers in all right, let's get the win and let's move on to Tampa and see what we can do to pick up a win in Tampa Bay. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here, hopefully talking about a Packers win. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.